Well, what's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Therapeutic Edge. Excuse me while I enjoy a cup of coffee. Welcome to day 3. It is Friday of Button Lock Week. That's just the way it worked out here on A Therapeutic Edge. It is very nice to have you here. On the table in front of us is not a new knife. Well, this one is, but this is a style that's been around for a while. This, of course, is the Pro-Tech Mordax, designed by the folks at Ferrum Forge for Protech. The first generation of this was in CPM 20CV, I think. This one is in Magnacut. These are, of course, sold out everywhere. That's just how these things go. This one is from The Gathering. This is sort of a special edition. As you can see, it's got the Gathering green inlay on the button. It's got the Ferrum Forge shield on it right there. I wanted one of these. It didn't have to be this one in particular when they came out, and of course I missed it. I missed my opportunity at Blade Show this year. And so when an opportunity to trade for one came along, I absolutely jumped at it. This happens to be number 44 of 60, but that doesn't matter. Well, the specs remain the same. It doesn't matter if you get one of these numbered ones or just one of the standard ones in Magnacut. My understanding is they are going to be making more of these, so keep your eyes open if you're interested. The Mordax has always been a really interesting knife to me because it verges on being boring. I know, I can hear a bunch of you, but this is $240. And at that price range, you were competing with a lot of really sort of interesting and complex knives. Even more interesting and complex designs from the folks at Ferrum Forge. But this is just a straight cutter. And it's a really, I love how blade heavy it is, a big monster blade. I love the sort of simplicity of the handle. It is deep carry, it is not ambi. I wish Protech would do that, but that doesn't seem to be their thing. It is very snappy, and it sounds cool because of the aluminum frame. I just like it, and the big heavy blade. There's no backspacer. It is 2 pieces of aluminum that are melded together. That means there's a lanyard spot right there. You can thread through there if you wanted to. I'm not a lanyard guy, but you could if you wanted to. You can get to the tip of the blade because of how just level it sits. It's got a very nice closed look, but it does mean that the tip is available. So if this is in your pocket and you jam your hand in there, you could potentially get yourself a little. I haven't done it, but I've learned that if I don't warn people of potential little injuries, someone will comment and say, I stabbed myself and you didn't tell me, and it's your fault anyway. But hey, let's take a look what you get. Now, I have done a review of the Mordax before. I had an original, so nothing has really changed. It is a big knife. You get 3 1/8 inches of cutting on a little over 3.5 inches of Magnacut steel. The grip area from behind that very prominent Ferrum Forge-esque flipper is 1, 2, 3, almost 4. Let's call it 3 3/4 to be safe, which means even in my big old mitts, there's a little bit of knife sticking out the back. Very nice. If you add that choil, which by the way is very, very usable on this, it's a nice full-size choil. You get 1, 2, 3, 4, basically 5 inches of handle to play with. It is, as I mentioned, a very big blade. Now, the original version of this knife didn't have what I would call a very refined grind. It was very thick behind the edge. This isn't much different, but it is better. Now, I have heard from some other people that got one of these that there have been some complaints about how well it cuts. I don't have a problem. This thing is very, very... Oh, I tore a little. That was bad on my part. But you can just cut. I mean, it's a slicey knife. That may mean that there's some variation in how the grind was done by the folks at Protech. It doesn't surprise me. Protech is a big name, but a very small company. They are based out of California here. and they're just not a very big company. So you may get some variation, which isn't the greatest thing in the world, but isn't a showstopper either. Another very popular knife from them in the button lock. Now, of course, they're most well known for their autos. I don't have to get into that. Protech is an automatic knife company, but every once in a while they make some really fantastic manual knives. Of course, everybody loves the Malibu. This is, of course, the sort of warny Malibu. This one is from Bay Area Knife Collectors Association. This is the club knife from 2021, as you can see. This is an excellent knife, but it's always been just a little bit too small for me. I don't particularly, I mean, it's a great knife, but it's just not my favorite. Whereas the Mordax here is much more my speed when it comes to size. Now, other than that, these are very similar. They both have excellent action. This one, of course, is in 20 CV. Yeah. I think. Is it 20 CV? Yeah, 20 CV says so right there. That's a personal flavor and taste thing. I love the Mordax for its size. Now, you can get, as you've seen this week, you can get an awful lot of button lock for not a ton of money. And by way of example, hang on a minute. Anyway, as I was saying, sorry, I had to get up and get something. As you know, you can get an awful lot of knife for $50, right? I mean, these aren't that much different in size. You know, yeah, really, they aren't. The logo here is a CJRB. It is a very budget-friendly button lock, but they're not really competitors, right? This is Magnacut. This is not. Basically, you're paying for the steel. This is G10 in steel. This is aircraft-grade aluminum. A much more honest comparison would be the Palace here from the folks at Spartan. These knives are very similar in price. We both have very similar handle materials. This is S35. This is Magnacut. I really like this knife, but the Protech's action is without question better, which is interesting because they're very similar. This is bigger, of course, a little bit, but the Protech action, you know, I mean, sure, the blade is thicker on the Spartan. You know, it's a heavier knife, but the Protech, like all manual Protechs, is just really almost graceful. Now, that's a word I don't use a lot with knives. You expect it from something like the Malibu, right, which is kind of a small and kind of refined little cutter. But they carried that forward into the Mordax here in a really nice way. So even with this sort of big old honking blade, it's still, I don't know, it's considerably more refined in hand than the chunk that is the Palace here. I love both of these, right? Don't get me wrong. You can see how much bigger this is, right? But this is just a great knife. And it has an infinitely better pocket clip than what you get on the Palace. It really does. And for whatever it's worth, this is $40 less than this. This is $240. This is $285. So a little more than 40 bucks. Anyway, I really like the Protech. I do. I like it quite a bit. I like it better than I liked it the first time. Part of that has to do with the better cutting edge. The other part has to do with the fact that tastes change over time. When I first got one of these, I was much more into big, giant, massive chunks of titanium. And the aluminum handles, and it didn't ring for me. But over time, as my knife collection has changed a little and I've had a lot more knives come through, I have come to reappreciate how good the Mordax is just in general. I mean, it's really a good knife. Anyway, closed profile on the Mordax is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 3/4, just shy of 3, just about a little over 4.5. Pocket profile is not superb because of this big pocket pecker, with all due respect to Nick Shabazz. At its thickest, it's just about 1.5 inches. And you're going to know this is in the pocket. This is not as well chamfered, for instance, as the... there's a good... Yeah. So the flipper on the CGRB here is really chamfered down and smooth. This definitely has a bit of bitey edge to it on the sides. So you're not going to want to put this in your pocket next to your phone. I don't carry anything in my right pocket except the pocket knife and maybe a pen. So that's not a problem for me. Let's do some size comparisons, shall we? Well, we've already had it out, so let's do it again, but at a little more level playing field. Here it is against the Palace. And as you can see, the Malibu, the Mordax is smaller than the Palace. Here it is against a full-size Griptilian. These knives are much closer in size. You get a little more cutting on the grip, but overall the Mordax is just a little bit bigger. Here it is against a Todbeg Quaken. This just happens to be on the table. This, of course, is the full-size Quaken. That's not going to help many of you very much at all now, is it? Oh, where to go? Here it is against a Rat 1. Again, close. Rat 1's a little bit longer, but you get a lot more, even without the additional choil, right? With the addition of this choil. Anyway, this is a... Anyway. And finally, our old dear friend, the Bug Out. Mordax is just a lot more knife. Mordax is, honestly, just about the perfect size knife for me. Because of the aluminum, it's fairly light. It's got a nice big blade on it. It's pokey where you need it to be. My dog is chewing a bone. Please excuse that noise. Should I take it away? Nah, let's leave it. We're just going to wrap up anyway. Let's go ahead and weigh out the Mordax. I find myself curious. We are coming in at 3.9 ounces, which for a knife that is just a hair over 8 inches with 3.5 inches of blade, that's not too bad. Not too bad at all. Yeah, sorry, what is it? 3.9, you know, and since we've had it out a bunch, the Palace comes in at 4.9, so this is a full ounce heavier. And the Pyrite, which is a little tiny button lock, but steel framed and steel scaled from our friends at CGRB, 3.7, 3.9. So these knives are very similar in weight. You just get a lot more knife here. I suppose for those of you that are very into the Malibu, 3.1 versus 3.9. So this is a little bit heavier, but it is so much bigger. I love this thing. I think you will too. Everyone does. Not all knives are for all people, but this is a hell of a cutting tool. Of course, the folks at Ferrum Forge have a really nice design aesthetic. They always have. This is no exception. In fact, for a Ferrum Forge knife, this is pretty tame. And you get 3.1, really? Where is that? I'll grab the thickest spot right there. Yeah. So 3.2 millimeters. It is a relatively thin bit of blade stock. I don't know if that's thinner than the original. I think it is. It's got a little bit of flat here on this drop point, and then it does come down to a very nice edge. It's not a razor blade. There are knives with better cut, you know, with better edges, better cutting edges. But this is the Ferrum Forge design aesthetic. It is tough because of it. And as you saw, this cuts paper like nobody's business, and it also cuts everything else. I've cut seat belt, I've cut rubber tubing, I've cut paracord. The Mordax is, well, at least this one, is an excellent slicing tool. And I think that's where we're going to leave it. This is the Protech Mordax, designed by the folks at Ferrum Forge. This is kind of the version 2 in Magnacut. If you find one in the original CPM 20CV and you want one, jump on it. You can always get it resharpened. If you want one of these, keep your eyes open. Protech will likely release another batch as we move along. As with all things Protech, they come and they go. So keep your eyes open if you're interested. I will post a link to the Protech site and, of course, to various other knife vendors where you may be able to find one down the road. I hope you've enjoyed this look at this knife. I know I am happy to have it. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.